Anytime you have negative self-talk, it's always going to map back to one of those three things. I'm not loved or likable the way that I am. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough education. There's some defect or missing piece. Another way is I'm not old enough. I hear that from younger people. Like I just not old enough. They don't see me that way. And then I don't deserve. Anytime you hear negative talk, work hard to map it to one of those three things and then go, that's not real. So, given it's not real, what would I do if that wasn't true? And then take that action.
Welcome to Scared Confident. I'm your host, Tiffany Sauder. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I have Brian Kavicky back on with me. And as I was prepping for this and getting ready to send him some notes about what I wanted to chat about, I started just reflecting over the last couple of weeks. I've had just more opportunity to be in the community, to be presenting, kicking off a couple of Life Event cohorts, and just really having time with women and listening really closely to what are we confronting? What are we giving power to? What is putting us into this reactive place in life where we don't feel just this sense of energy and lightness and excitement for our days? And what are we giving power to that is stealing our joy? Because I see you talk to me and I see in your eyes that you're like, I want life to feel differently. I want to feel joy, but we're giving power over to other things that is taking it from us. So we're going to talk about that. What is stealing our joy? And I have some literally direct quotes that we're going to double click into with Brian. And also a kind of a long form email that was sent in from a listener saying, hey, this is something really specific that we're dealing with. So we're going to double click into, I'm not just going to say your issues. These are mine too. I am living this. How do we stay on top of our mental game? Because when we do that, we create in the world what we believe is true. And so tackling what our minds are allowing us to sort of let live inside of the space between our ears is where all change starts. So that's what we're going to talk about. So Brian, thanks for coming on. Let's get to it.
Okay.
Can I actually have you react maybe first to this idea that what we believe we make true? Because I'm pretty confident. I mean, there's lots of books that say that, but I think you telegraph that most acutely into my life. So talk about that for a second, and then we'll go into this kind of belief thing.
So, if you ask people, where do your beliefs come from? They say life experiences, environments, how I grew up, all those different things. None of that is actually true. It's actually backwards. So, the first thing is that a thought is put in you. So, maybe your parents say, this is what you should believe. That thought is put into you of here's the belief. And then what you do and what your brain does is it seeks evidence to prove that correct. So all of your beliefs eventually become true. That's why somebody posts their belief on Facebook and everybody argues with them. You don't change their mind because they have proof. And sometimes that proof is the exact same proof the other side's saying. And they're going, no, that says I'm right and blah, blah, blah. So you're working to be right and correct all the time. And that will dictate your actions. So your beliefs dictate your actions just because you always prove them right. So yucky thing about that is that if I don't like my actions or I don't like my outcomes, I have to change my belief, which just means I have to think the opposite thing or I have to believe something different, but have confidence that you'll always be right. You'll always find evidence for that.
I think what can also get kind of trippy is that you actually have to start authentically believing it before you see any evidence that it's true.
Yes, you have to say, I bet this is true, or, well, I know this isn't true anymore. So it can't just be fine. I'll be open minded.
Yeah.
No, I believe. So the analogy for this, to make it less mystical, is sort of like the metal detector. So you go to the beach and you have a metal detector and you say, hey, do you think there's any money on this beach? Well, somebody goes, I don't think I'll find anything. So they grab the metal detector, they go around for 5 or 10 minutes, nothing happens. They find junk and they say, see, I told you so. Then somebody comes and they say, I think there's treasure on this beach. And they'll comb that beach and go through it and they find stuff and they go, see, I told you there was treasure. So it's not like this thing of manifestation where if I just believe that it'll happen, it'll manifest in my life. It's that Your actions become dictated by your pursuit of the truth, but your setting what's true kind of drives that.
Perfect. Let's move into it because I think that actually matters for where we're going in the conversation if it goes where I think. Okay, so I started off by sending Brian these 3 quotes that were like literal verbatims from women that I've talked to over like the last 10 days. Number 1, I'm so tired of taking care of everyone else. And as you hear me say these, see if you have thought or said them or dared say them out loud to anybody else. Number 2 is I have a hard time enjoying the success I have or I've created or giving myself credit when things go well. Number 3, I want something different, but I don't know where to start. So I sent these to Brian, actually thinking that they were 3 very different topics. And his response back to me was, what, Brian?
They're all the same thing. They all come from the root of the same problem.
And I was like, what do you mean? So that's where we go now.
So if you think about these phrases, so I'm so tired of taking care of everyone else. There's an I'm in that phrase. Like, this is how I feel. This is what is going through my head, blah, blah, blah. But the cause is I'm taking care of everybody else. The second one is I have a hard time enjoying the success or giving myself credit. Well, some of that is I don't give myself credit, which is a real, like, why wouldn't you give yourself credit for something you did well? And also it seeks this validation of others. There's an embedded thing of nobody gives me credit when I do well. I also don't give myself credit. And then I want something different, but I don't know where to start. I know I want something different. So if I know what I want, why don't I start? The problem is that they actually don't know what they want or haven't allowed that to happen. All of these things come from a place of negative self-talk, which becomes self-fulfilling for how they're in pursuit of whether they're in pursuit.
So what is the alternative to the negative self-talk? Because I've always told you, like, I can't do nothing. If I can't do the thing I'm doing because you're telling me that's wrong, then what do I do instead? Because I can't do nothing. That's not an option.
Okay. So if you remember years ago, there was a skit on Saturday Night Live. It was like Stuart Smalley, and the most famous one was he had it with Michael Jordan, where Michael Jordan was talking about his vulnerabilities as a joke. I struggle with basketball sometimes, like that kind of thing. But Stuart Smalley sort of always ended the skit where he'd look in the mirror and he would say things like, I'm good enough, I'm lovable, all those things. Well, whoever wrote that knew a lot about psychology and was probably getting therapy, because what they're referencing is a phenomenon called the devil's tongue. And the devil's tongue is the root of all negative self-talk. So anything you tell yourself that is not good comes from this place. And it's not literally the devil speaking in your ear. It's a biological, chemical thing that is meant for emotional protection. So if I throw a pen at your face, you're going to blink. Even if I said, don't blink, you're going to blink as soon as that pen's coming at your eyeballs to protect you. The devil's tongue is your emotional blink. And the 3 phrases that are emotional blinks are, I'm not loved or likable just the way that I am. I'm not good enough. Like, I don't have enough education. I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough time. Like, it's this mindset of scarcity, is I don't have enough or I'm defective in some way. And the third is I don't deserve. I don't deserve success. I don't deserve nice things. I don't deserve to have a happy life. That something about me is defective. So whenever you're in a situation where things could be good and you're putting yourself out there at emotional risk, what your brain does says, hold on, maybe you're not loved or likable just the way that you are. You should probably change something, or maybe you shouldn't put yourself out there, because if you do that, people might not like you. And you go, yeah, because people don't like me. And you self-fulfill that, and you don't take the action because you listen to that. So to your question of what do I do? It's don't listen to it. Hear it as a blink. Like, you don't care when you blink. When you're like, oh, I blinked, you just move on with your day. When you hear the devil's tongue going, you know what? Maybe you're not a likable person. Maybe that's your issue. Go, no, that's not real. That is just cautioning me that I'm about to get out of my comfort zone, do something different, but I have to treat this differently, or I have to go after it. And we can do that one at a time with these.
Yeah, let's do that because I always feel like my body reacts to what my mind is telling me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I know. For me, it's like, what's the tell? For me, it's the way my body feels. Like when the devil's tongue is at play, I feel so weak and powerless physically, sluggy, tired, indecisive, like just like heavy. And that's my clue of like something's got a hold of my brain actually. What is it? Versus when I'm in my power state of like a positive mindset, my body reflects it. Like the colors I want to wear, the speed that I walk, just confidence in my choices. It's like I might be right, I might be wrong, but we're rolling with it anyway. Is like my on top of it healthy brain version. So I don't know if that, but it's like if you're looking for clues of where is my mindset at, for me, it's so reflected in my physical energy.
Yeah, and people describe spiraling. They're like, "I'm sorry, I'm just spiraling right now. My mind just racing." It all started with one of these statements, and
Mm.
because that statement feels true in your head, you can't do it. So you reference, I'm putting on clothes for the day, and you look in the mirror and you go, "I look terrible." And your brain goes, yeah, because you're not loved or likable just the way you are. You have to dress differently. You have to dress better. You have to spend time with makeup. You have to do all these things because if you don't, people won't think you're good. And you go, yeah, I'm not good. And you just listen to that instead of going, no, I'm me. I look good in everything. Nobody's looking at my clothes. Who cares? And move on. You're responding to that and
Mm,
saying, well, that must be true instead of going, oh, it's not real.
good. Okay, let's go into these. Which one do you want to start with?
I'm so tired of taking care of everyone else. So when you are listening to negative talk, you are almost rarely focusing on what is your role in the situation. So someone who decides to take care of somebody else has decided that. You see this with parents all the time. People are like, well, I can't have my kids get hurt. I need them to do well in school, so I have to do their homework for them, blah, blah. And all you're doing is enabling it. But when you decide to take that on and you decide to take their outcomes on for yourself, you are enabling them enough that they stop doing those things. So what happens is because they stop doing it,
Mhm.
you start to resent them because they're not putting forth any effort, but you were the cause for all of those things. So why would your kid do their own homework if you're going to do it for them? Why would they empty the dishwasher if when they never empty the dishwasher, you go ahead and unload it? And then you go, I just take care of everybody else. You chose that path and you
Mhm.
chose it because there was a little voice in your head that said, if I don't do this, people are going to see me as defective. People are going to see that I don't have my life under control, blah, blah, blah. And it's that devil's tongue that triggered it. And all of a sudden, you just do the wrong response because you're responding to that.
It seems to me in my own behavior, the reaction, I'm going to use the word trigger, but I'll clarify here. The reaction trigger is a lower hurdle to clear than a proactive trigger. So, for example, I could stand in my kitchen for 4.5 solid hours, and there would be somebody who walked in every minute who needed something from me. And I could just react to that, like for real, from like 4 to 8:30 p.m. And it's a fairly low energy hurdle for me to cross for the first few hours of just like, oh, you need a glass of water, no problem. Like I'm just responding versus me saying, no, this is my priorities for the evening. I'm going to go take 45 minutes on the Peloton and you're going to figure like stopping the inertia of the evening of the request, reorganizing how we're like that takes more force mentally. Is that true or false?
It's actually false.
False.
It's
Okay.
very counterintuitive. I believe that proactive and reactive are the exact same behavior. So,
Okay. What? Say that
yeah.
again.
So think of a fire station.
Shots fired. Wait, I believe proactive and reactive behavior are the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
So think of a fire station. You would go, wow, those fire people, they have to be very reactive. Somebody's car is on fire, somebody's house, they got to go. The reason they can be reactive is because they've got their boots laid out, they've got their uniforms ready to go, they put a pole in to get down the stairs faster, blah, blah, blah. All of those are proactive behaviors
Mm.
allowed to react. So in your own analogy, you say, I chose to be in the kitchen, which is your proactive behavior, which now allows you to react. But you're choosing the reaction in that case to say, look, I'm needed. I can say, I'm going to be in the kitchen and not do a thing. And when somebody says, can I have a glass of water? I could go, do you know where the glasses are? Do you know how to work the fridge? And they'll be like, yes. And I don't have to do anything, but I have to proactively decide how I'm showing up in the kitchen before
Mhm.
that's happening. So people who claim to be reactive, all I say is just take those reactive things and turn them into proactive, because you did that in order to be reactive. Like, I don't respond to emails except at the last minute. It's because you proactively decide to wait for the last minute. You have more control over your outcomes than you think. Like, this whole thing of I'm so tired of taking care of everything, proactively you decided I'm going to do this for everybody in order to feel needed and wanted and to get
Mhm.
that need met. And now you're just resenting everyone because you made that choice. It's your fault.
Love it. Number 2.
I have a hard time enjoying the success and giving myself credit when things go well. So this comes from I don't deserve. So I don't deserve credit. I don't deserve accolades. I don't deserve that. This typically is said by people who, have a love language of verbal affirmations. They like credit. So in other words, people who say this is hard for me are ones where that means a lot to them as well,
Mhm.
which is why they shut it down. But if you say, oh no, I deserve to have credit, I deserve to have accolades, and I'm going to be the first one to give it myself, is actually starts from acknowledging your gains. So as human beings, when we set goals or objectives, or we say, this is what I want for myself, when we fall short, we become self-critical. Like, I didn't do enough, I missed my goal, blah, 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 instead of going, look at all the progress I've made. I never would have gotten this far unless I set that goal. And they worry about it. So what happens is they go, well, because I'm falling short in my own head, it always starts with I'm falling short in my own head, or this sense of perfectionism. What they do is they start looking at it from everybody else. And when they don't get it from everybody else, because none of us is running around the world going, how do I give other people credit? Then they go, well, if nobody else is giving me credit, I don't deserve to give credit for myself. And we're back in this vicious cycle. So the fix is give yourself credit, stop looking to other people to do it, and say things like, I did that. I'm proud of myself. I did an amazing job. I deserve to reward myself because I did something that I've never done before. And then you're not worried about anybody else and you're giving yourself credit. This I have a hard time isn't real. You don't have a hard time. You just don't think you deserve to give
Mm.
yourself credit.
2 things that came up in my brain as I was thinking about this was this idea of if I don't see myself as successful, I don't give myself credit for being successful, but I can other people. I don't know if I know how to say this very well, but if I can see it in other people and it's like they must be special because they accomplish success, but I don't see that specialness in myself. And so I don't have to have the pressure to be successful. Does that make sense or not at all?
Yeah, but that's devil's tongue number two is I'm not good enough or there's some defect in me. That's
Yeah.
where that actually starts from. And
Mhm.
what that always originates from is I'm playing a comparison game where I'm only looking at the thing I want to look at, which is their success. You don't know what's going on in their lives with their marriage. You
Mhm.
don't know their relationship with the kids. You don't know what their financial situation. You don't know all this other stuff. You're measuring on one thing alone and you're going, yep, I'm not there because I'm
Mhm.
defective. When really you might have it more put together than they have. And they might actually go, I wish I were you, but we
Mhm.
never look that way. We're self fulfilling the negative thought.
So true. Okay, number 3.
I want something different, but I don't know where to start. It's not actually a true statement. It starts from a place of I don't deserve. And when you feel like you don't deserve, you start to not dream or wish or want at all. It is okay to want. You have the right to want stuff. You can want to take a vacation 12 times a year. You can want to have fancy cars. You don't have to get all those things, but you can say, I want that. Nobody can take that and be critical. So this person is basically going, I don't know if it's okay for me to want what I want. So I'm just going to shut it down and say, I don't know where to start. Because if I claim confusion, there's no action to that. So your point of I need to do something, this is actually a person who doesn't want to do something because they're worried that their want isn't appropriate or okay to have, or that something says, well, I have to earn it or whatever. There's some other language in there. But if you just go, you know what? I want stuff. It's okay for me to want stuff. I can pursue it when I want to pursue it. I know how to pursue it. If I did, you actually start down the right path of accomplishing your wants.
I see in this another dimension sometimes where I'll just speak to women because it's who I mostly am speaking to, but where wanting something that I think I want, I perceive is going to create distance between me and people I love or people who I want to be loved by. And so if I go pursue this, I'm saying I don't know where to start, but I'm afraid that starting is going to disrupt the way that people have experienced me, disrupt the norms inside of my marriage, just disrupt that. And that feels super risky because there's safety, at least in the known entity, even if it's not my ideal, at least I know what it is.
So now you've entered devil's tongue number one, which is I'm not loved or likable just the way that I am. So what you
Mm,
start to worry about is if I do this thing, it will cause me to not be loved or liked, which is the create distance phrase,
mhm,
instead of going, well, I am loved, which means that person's going to want me to have what I want
mhm.
because they love me enough to make sure that I get my needs met and my wants met. Why would this create distance? And then we never make the attempt. So what happens is we never have the conversation to
Totally.
go, hey, I want to share with you what my wants are. And I'd also like to do that for you to make sure you're getting what you want so we can work on each other's wants as partners. But people don't even have the conversation because they're worried about the distance. But that started with the devil's tongue.
That is wild, Brian. Because when I go back 4 years ago to like my very first podcast episode, which is my fear journey, it's basically all around that thing of like, of me becoming where I felt pulled to continue growing was going to leave so many people behind, was what I was telling myself. But in reality, everybody around me elevated as I did.
Mhm.
And this like whole idea of you starting to realize you can give each other your priorities, it's like a really powerful thing. So anyways, I'm like having a wildly reflective moment right now.
But what you did in that case is you had the fear and you did it anyway. So you ended up ignoring that or figuring out, oh, I'm going to do it anyway, or here's how I get there, or here's what I have to do in order to make it happen. But you could have shut down and said, nah, it's too risky.
Yeah, I like thrashed through it. Like like it was a thrashing. Totally a thrashing. I do think there's times where we use confusion as a way to let ourselves off the hook for action too.
Always. That's how you got your parents. So you're doing your homework and you get bored or you don't understand it or whatever it is, and you just threw it back in your backpack and moved on with your evening. When your parents like, "Did you finish your homework?" You went, "No, I'm confused. Like I got stuck on problem 3." That means you're not doing anything to get problem 3 right. You didn't ask your parents, you didn't ask for
Mhm.
help, you didn't work harder. You just claimed you're confused. So the racket in order to do nothing is to complain I'm confused.
So good. So irritatingly clear. Yeah, okay. So I wanna spend a couple minutes on this next couple of paragraphs. So I had a listener email me. I mean, it's like, I don't know, maybe 12 sentences, and I'm gonna read it. And Brian and I are gonna double click into pieces of it because whether this is your exact verbs and nouns, no doubt we have all been in this same place of confusion. It's kind of a bridge from where we just came from with this confusion conversation. So here I go. I'm going to read it. We ran out of time. And so I wanted to shoot you a quick question about applying this, some of what you talked about, to my situation. Like many of these women, I'm in a very chaotic stage of growing our family while working a career in middle management. I identify with the fearful loyalist diagram. So, if you're not familiar, fearful loyalist is somebody who most naturally prioritizes their family and themselves, and their career is what they starve. So, in the 3 circles of a life event. Little side note there from me. Okay, back to it. I feel very reactive to my work that's in a unique role, project management with a strong customer facing element, but also wears hats that are sales and strategic planning. I'm struggling to identify priorities with vague direction from my boss. I think what I'm struggling with is the right questions or wording of the question to ask my manager for help without it seeming like I don't have a handle on my tasks. I attended today's conversation in hopes to find a direction to help me get to a place where I can sleep at night without waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about work and not being able to fall asleep. My job isn't that important for me to do, but the perfectionist in my head wants to do everything well. I've always put my family and my own well being above my career, but feel like I could be doing my job better if I could take some steps forward towards a goal at work. Identifying where to start has always been my downfall, which could also be confusion when I'm overwhelmed and sometimes need a bit of a nudge in the right direction to get the momentum going. So she asked, hey, any words of wisdom? So when I read this, I was like, I mean, I could probably share some things, but I think Brian's just thoughtfulness towards this could maybe be more valuable. And then I was like, I think we could all probably benefit. So what do you see in here, Brian?
So words always bear fruit in your behavior. So what you say tends to be how you're going to act. So there's words in here like I feel very reactive. We've already talked about the differences in reactive and proactive not being there, but that clues on here's the problem. I think what I'm struggling with, I'm overwhelmed. This whole thing screams, I'm confused. And what that says, and there's actually a phrase is, I'd like a nudge in the right direction. The weird phenomenon about people who are confused is they always know what to do. Like when you're close to the problem, you always know the solution. You just don't do anything about it because you believe the solution is part of the risk. So in this case, she identifies I'm at risk because I have to ask my boss for help with this thing that my boss should actually already be helping me with, but I don't know how to word it. I don't know how to do this, blah, blah, blah. But you probably do know how to word it. And here's the example. Have you ever asked someone for help? Their response was, you're incompetent because you asked me for help. So the phrase here is, I think what I'm struggling with is the right question or wording to ask my own manager for help without seeming like I don't have a handle on my task. That is not a person's response to, I want help. It's, of course, I'll help you. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't been clear, blah, 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 blah. So just asking the question, hey, I'm a little bit confused about my goals and my priorities. Where would you tell me to start? Because I don't know what to do and I'm feeling a little lost. The response, if you heard that, you'd be like, oh, let me help you with that. People want to help. You want to help. We talked about people who feel like they're helping others all the time is we elect that even though it causes resentment. And so this person is dealing with a little resentment. And most managers are incompetent. Like she admits, I'm in middle management struggling with incompetency. So what makes you think that your manager also isn't a little incompetent and not done the job? So just ask.
How does somebody listening to this not feel defensive about you saying most managers are incompetent and you probably are a little bit too? Because I feel defensive.
Are you competent in all areas? Do you have all the answers? Do you know exactly what you're going to do? Do you know, like, if somebody's like, hey, where are we going? Where's this heading? What should we be doing next? Isn't there a piece of you that just goes, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just figuring this out as I go. Like, we're all figuring it out.
Uh-huh.
Somebody gave me the phrase recently that said, as a parent, your kids get to watch you grow up.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, you're an incompetent when you have your first kid, you're an incompetent parent, but you figure it out. We are
Mhm.
all at some level of incompetency. And so the more that we admit, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to do things, or just not do anything about it, instead of going, hey, I don't know what to do, the more we stay stuck. That's why you stay up late, is you're staying stuck on
Mhm.
purpose.
So the on purpose part is why. So that you said because you're staying stuck on purpose. What does that mean actually?
There's emotional risk here. So if we go back to the devil's tongue, I'm not loved or likable just the way that I am. Why would my manager help me with something? They are viewing me through the professional lens, not the personal lens. So they probably don't care. I am defective in some way. I'm not good enough. I don't have education. I don't have the answers. Also fed into this of it's wrong for me to ask for help because I'm defective. I don't have the experience. I should know. And instead of going, I don't know, which puts emotional risk, it's wrong for me to not know. And I don't deserve help. I don't deserve assistance. I don't deserve people telling me how to get out of confusion. This person is actually listening to all three of those negative talk instead of going, you know what? I'm just going to take the emotional risk and say, this is hard for me to do, boss, but I feel really vulnerable in this moment, but I don't know what my priorities are. I don't know what I should be doing. Can you help me with that? And to see, oh, when I actually show up vulnerable and ask for help, I will get help because I deserve help. They probably like me and they don't see me as defective, so I don't need to worry about that.
I think another helpful question sometimes to managers, this is just like very tactical, is can you help me understand what good looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes just reframing the questions of like, what's my job description, or what am I like? It's just like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. But what does good look like is oftentimes a mix of qualitative and quantitative, which is more encapsulating of actually what your like, manager or boss might want. So anyway, kind of random.
But there's a phrase in here that sort of is the tell. I'm struggling to identify priorities with vague direction from my own boss. Good leaders and good managers are always people that say, hey, I'm going to take responsibility and take some fault first. But it also is not always your fault. I mean, the reason that this person is in the jam is because they got vague direction. So going to someone and saying, I need some clarity from you because I feel a little bit, it just wakes somebody up to go, oh, I need to be clearer. And it's not being critical of someone, it's just asking for help, and the help takes away the pressure.
And with never getting the feedback that they're not clear, they'll never get clearer. That has been a professional struggle of mine my entire life. People need a decoder ring to be able to work beside me.
Yes.
And it's frustrating for everybody, but I have gotten better at it because people are kind enough to tell me that I'm not being clear. So she also, I think, needs to hear that it could be a gift to your boss, actually, that you're giving this clarity back.
Exactly.
Well, any parting advice, Brian, if people are like, all right, how do I today give less power to the devil's tongue?
So anytime you have negative self-talk, it's always going to map back to one of those three things. I'm not loved or likable the way that I am. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough education. There's some defect or missing piece. Another way is I'm not old enough. I hear that from younger people. Like I just not old enough. They don't see me that way. And then I don't deserve. Anytime you hear negative talk, work hard to map it to one of those three things, because you'll always be able to map it to those things, and then go, that's not real. So given it's not real, what would I do if that wasn't true? And then take that action. And that action is almost always going to be the correct, the most productive, the healthiest reaction, because I'm not listening or starting from that negative talk point.
Incredible. Ladies, your belief that you are enough, that life has good things ahead for you, that there's abundance on this planet to be able to give you everything your heart is dreaming of, it starts with you believing it first. So I'm here to cheer for you. I'm here cheering you on. I want great things for you. I want great things for me. And I believe you're amazing. And I believe that about me too, actually. So peace out, everybody. Thanks for listening today. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Scared Confident. Until next time, keep telling fear, you will not decide what happens in my life. I will.